Hello, Year 9. So we're starting a new kind of topic in your DT food lessons, and so we're looking at the environmental impact of food businesses. So the learning aim is I can evaluate the ways in which food establishments could have a more positive effect on the environment. Today's lesson is obviously it's only a very short lesson. We're just looking at the 6 R's. This is something you might very well have covered in other DT lessons, and it's very transferable, the information. You just need to think about it from kind of a hospitality or a food point of view. So I'm going to quickly whiz through them, and then we've got a task at the end. So the 6 R's are reduce, reuse, recycle, refuse, rethink, repair. They're all different ways that businesses and individuals can lessen the impact of food production and waste on the environment. So it's all about basically being as environmentally friendly as we can be in every kind of situation. So I'll quickly whiz through them all, and then there's a task at the end because I'm very conscious that you're not going to have that long to do the task. So reduce, we can reduce the use of processed foods. If we are reducing the use of them, then the energy is not going to have to go into actually making them in the first place. Reduce energy and methods of cooking, so using methods that are going to use less electricity, less gas, and still get the same results at the end. Reducing our carbon footprint, so buying locally, buying foods or growing food yourself, and just making sure that that carbon footprint, basically how many miles something has travelled to get to you, is as small as possible. Reducing food waste and think about how we can use it. Reduce the use of pesticides. You could have organic food production, and then that's going to have a positive impact on kind of the environment in which it's being grown. And buy products with little or no packaging, so you're reducing that use of packaging. Obviously, some things need to be in some form of packaging for you to physically get them home from the shop or for it to be delivered to a business. Things like bananas, for example, they're already in a packaging essentially of themselves. They don't need more packaging around the outside. So, reuse. Products can either be used for the same or a new purpose. So, for example, you might have seen them in tea rooms, for example. If you have some old side plates and they don't match with anything, you could make it into a cake stand. The main one for food is using leftover ingredients to make other food products. So if, for example, you have made, typical examples, if you've made bolognese, reusing any leftovers to turn it into a lasagna. All right, although it's a similar food product, it is different and could be served then on a menu the following day. Recycling, obviously we all know what recycling is, but thinking about the choice of packaging materials from where you're buying or that you're using when you're reselling food products or that you've produced and you're selling them, if you can select packaging materials that can then be recycled by the next person down the line, that's going to be beneficial. Making sure you yourselves are recycling tins, plastic, glass, card and paper, anything that is recyclable, and doing that in the appropriate manner. And then finally, composting appropriate food waste. There's some food waste that can't be composted, but certainly any kind of organic matter, things like ends of vegetables, fruit, peelings, etc. They're all things which can be composted and then used in the garden. So refuse or refusing, refuse to work with or buy from other companies who are not being conscious in terms of their environmental decisions, and also refusing to use non-environmentally friendly packaging, or work with people that are not at least going some way into having to think about the packaging I can't get my words out, that aren't thinking about the packaging and how they could reduce their environmental impact. Okay, rethinking. So think about how will you serve and package food to your customers. Is it necessary? Is it sustainable? Can you make some different choices? So for example, if you are serving a sandwich, does it need to be in a plastic container? Could it be wrapped in like a paper bag that's easily recyclable? Or could it be popped in a biodegradable form of packaging? You can also think about the energy supply. So could you install some kind of renewable energy supply, things like solar power, wind power? Also, could you use any water, say from washing up, certainly from kind of rinsing things down, could you use that for watering plants, if you have like a vegetable garden, something like that? So just having a rethink of how you could rejig things to make it more environmentally friendly. Thinking about where you get your ingredients from, like I just mentioned there, could you grow them yourself in a vegetable garden? Could you buy them more locally? And just think about if you're maybe buying things just in season, they're going to have travelled from a much closer distance. So again, it's kind of linking back to the other ones, you'll be reducing your carbon footprint. Repairing, this is where it gets a little bit more complicated. There's a point where if something is broken and it cannot be fixed, you can't actually repair it. But if electrical equipment, certainly large scale equipment, is broken, if it can be fixed, that is a far better kind of use of your money and use of the equipment and resources than just replacing it. Slightly different if it was something kind of front of house facing that people are seeing, because it doesn't look particularly professional and the image you're giving across is not as good. But you could do things like you could sell it to someone. So say you had a hot water urn for doing cups of tea or coffee. If that was damaged, if it could be fixed but it wouldn't look as good, you might not want it in your business, but that doesn't mean it's not functioning anymore. It could be fixed and it could be donated to a charity or somewhere that, like the Salvation Army, for example, where it's still being used. It's not going to waste, it's not going to landfill, but it might not be in the same kind of context. Also, another thing you can think of, this is moving slightly away from food, is rather than, say you were wanting to open a new hotel or a new restaurant, rather than having that in a new building, but could you repurpose, convert an older and unused building into the restaurant or the hotel, rather than having to start from scratch again. So your task today is just to create some flashcards for each of the 6 R's. So on the front you'll just have one of the 6 R's, so this example is reduce, and then on the back you would have some of the points relating to that one of the 6 R's. It doesn't need to be all of them, but just a few examples. So on this one I've put reduce energy use, reduce processed food, reduce carbon footprint, and reduce food waste. There is also, which I've just linked on the end of this PowerPoint, a nice video that talks about how at an individual level we can kind of follow the 6 R's to be more sustainable and environmentally focused. Thank you, Ian.